All right, welcome to another episode of the Bulldog Bark. I'm yours truly, the Guru. With me, as always, got my partner in crime, BFC, Butler's Fighting Crew. And with us today, we got a very special guest in the building, former Butler Bulldog, Stephen Bennett. Stephen, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. We appreciate you having us on here and are coming on here with us. And just so Butler Nation knows, we're going to do this interview with Stephen, and then afterwards, stay tuned. We're going to do a little SMU recap, and then also a preview of Butler's upcoming matchup against Merrimack. But no, Stephen, appreciate you coming on here. Super excited to talk to you about your Butler days. Before we even dive into the good old days, talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to ever since your Bulldog days.
Yeah, absolutely. So after I graduated from Butler, I went on to medical school. Right there, I stayed home in Indianapolis. I went to Marion University, College of Osteopathic Medicine, which is right down the road from Butler. Best school, best medical school in Indiana, because the only other one is Indiana University. So we got to be better than them. And I finished my med school. I spent 4 years there, so I graduated from there in what would have been 2021. And then after that, I started my residency training, which is in orthopedic surgery. And so I'm currently in my fourth out of 5 years of doing that. And I'm doing that just south of Dayton, Ohio. So really not that far from Indianapolis, just a couple hours. And once I finish that in a year and a half, I'll do one more year of training in sports medicine. So kind of specializing in athletic related injuries and treating those surgically and taking care of athletes and being a team physician and things like that. So it's been a few years down the road. I haven't ventured too far. I'm still in school, so to speak, or training, however you want to phrase it. But yeah, so just over here, just south of Dayton. In addition to the orthopedic surgery training that I'll be finishing up here in a year and a half, I'm huge into leadership. I'm huge into public speaking, and I've done multiple speaking events and helped others develop their leadership skills and abilities to what I know. And so I've kind of officially launched this Bennett Orthopedics and Leadership Development, Bold for short. It's one of the companies that I'm starting, and I'm super excited to launch that in addition to my surgical training and hopefully get some more speaking gigs and help other people develop into the leaders that they want to be and maximize their own potential. So extremely excited about both doing that and surgery and the opportunities that both bring.
That's awesome, man. And going off of that, is there any specific area in sports, it's just in general, or is it like you're looking to go into like basketball or just work for a university, or is there anything specific you're trying to get into?
Yeah, I think, in an ideal world, I eventually worked for a basketball team. I mean, basketball was always my passion. That game was obviously the one I played for quite some time. And so being with a basketball team would be my favorite. Obviously, taking care of any athlete who undergoes some injuries, because I had a bunch of myself before I got to Butler. That's what motivated me to get into surgery. And so taking care of any athletes would be a privilege. And you never know, being a team physician somewhere would be pretty special too. So.
Bring us back. So we all know that you were a walk-on back in 2013, 2014, right? And I'm gonna dive into that too in a little bit here because I believe you were 2013, 2014 would have been the 1 year right before Holtman. I'm thinking that
Yes.
correctly. Yes.
Yep.
So you had
Exactly.
you had a unique situation as well. But before we even dive into that, talk to us a little bit about the walk-on process for you. We've had the pleasure of talking to current ones like Ethan McComb.
Yeah.
He talks to us a lot about how he's doing the scout teams, the practice teams. Talk to us about first of all how that came to be, and then kind of your experiences as being a walk-on.
Yeah, so I came from Newcastle High School, so I was obviously, very familiar with Butler because of the Newcastle Butler pipeline. Great players, Brandon Miller, Darnell Archie, Bruce Horan, Chase DeGaulle, and Zach Hahn all came before me and kind of set the Newcastle to Butler pipeline. Uh, Kind of my first 2.5, 3 years of high school, had a pretty successful career. Coach Terry Johnson had come to a workout, so I was starting to develop a little bit of a relationship with Butler, a little bit of recruiting. And unfortunately, about halfway through my junior season, I had a bunch of knee injuries. So I tore my ACL and my meniscus, and I had surgery to fix that. But unfortunately, on that same knee, I then tore what's called my patellar tendon. So then I had to have two more surgeries. I missed an entire year of basketball and had about 12 months of rehab. So yeah, I went through those injuries, and unfortunately, the scholarships I had earned, everybody took them away. The people who were calling and recruiting me, that they stopped doing that. And so, I went through my senior year and I finished that and I had a pretty successful career, but I had been through a lot. I wasn't quite the same player at the time. And so I went to Coach Stevens and I said, hey, Coach, whatever I can do to be a part of this program, whatever I can do to be a part of this team, to walk on, and I'll do that, whatever it takes. And he was gracious and kind enough to me to say, hey, you can have a spot on this team. You can see what happens. I can't guarantee you anything from year to year, and we'll just see what happens. And so that's what I did. That's how I got there. So it was a little bit of a non-traditional approach. I never, had any other plans than to be a Division I scholarship player and have a heck of a career. And some of those things, whether we get into them, not turned out pretty good, and some of them not as much as I would have. But that's how I got there, and so definitely a little bit of a different journey from when I started.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One more thing, and then I'll let BFC take over here. Back to what you're saying. So obviously, you talked to, and we talked to Andrew Travis about this as well. You talked to Brad Stevens. Obviously, he went and took the Boston job. You had Brandon Miller for a year, and then you had Chris Holtman for 3 years. And I know the walk-on situation is slightly different, but obviously with the transfer portal these days, even walk-ons, we had a walk-on last year that transferred, right? Everyone can transfer and stuff. What kind of kept you at Butler even with all that turnover?
Yeah, I mean, it really was the history of the program. I mean, we talk about the Butler way, and I believed in that. I felt like I was a Butler guy. I felt like the way that the culture was built was the reason for their success, and I wanted to be a part of that culture. Obviously, Coach Stevens leaving, it changed a little bit, but I was committed, to that team and to those guys, even though I was just a freshman, and I was going to make that known, irregardless of what would have happened. We could have went 0-20 the next year or 0-60 the next 3 years. I wouldn't have thought anything other than to be a Butler Bulldog. So that's just where I knew my heart wanted to be.
Awesome, man. BFC, what you got?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to your high school career. I love talking with guys that played high school in Indiana just because it's a different beast. Um, what was one of your favorite arenas or games you got to play in during your career there?
Gosh, well, I would be remiss not to be biased and say my own hometown gym, first of all. Newcastle, obviously, it's the largest high school gym in the world. It seats like 9,400 people. So that was my safe haven. Aside from that, though, really, I would probably say there was a place called the Wigwam in Anderson, Indiana. They don't actually have that gym open anymore. It was a big gym. It sat like, I think, 7,000, 8,000 people. Anderson was always a good opponent. They were a conference opponent, and it was an awesome place to play. One of my favorites. And they had this huge pregame routine where they did this big ritual based off the mascot and stuff. I don't think they do that anymore, but it was a heck of a place to play. Some great battles, but that would probably be my favorite.
Awesome. And yeah, like we said, we spoke with Ethan here twice on the podcast, and we got a nice little insight of what it is, what it's like being a walk on, and some of the responsibilities that you have, which for him, he's kind of talking about you know mimicking a player on the other team that they need or mimicking a scheme. Um, what was maybe one of some of your big responsibilities when you were there? Obviously, a 4-year walk on, maybe taking a leadership role in those last couple of years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, like Ethan talked about, your primary role as a walk-on. I mean, you run the scout team, and you do that to the very best of your ability. I mean, whether it's running the plays exactly as the upcoming opponent is going to run them down to the T, whether it's really trying to challenge those guys that you're playing, offensively in your role. You're trying to perform at a high level in order to help them improve during practice and prepare for the game. So my thought process was I'm going to give you everything that I possibly have to try to make you better, to get us ready for the game. And that's really, I would say the first 2 years, that was my mindset. That was my goal, to be the very best I could be in practice and to be a source of positivity during the game and during the season, really, because there's a lot of ups and downs. It's a long season, and there are different things that every player needs in order to be successful. So I try to be that for people. Really, as I transitioned into my junior year, about halfway through, and then into my senior year, I started to take a little bit, like you mentioned, a leadership role, or what I felt was a good leadership role, because I felt like I had a unique perspective. I had seen what was a not as successful season to a pretty good successful season my sophomore year, and we were being successful our junior. We ran into a little bit of a slump about halfway through, and I remember the first time I kind of took on that role, I sent a big. If you ask any of the guys that I played with, From then on, I sent these big long text messages to try to get us in the right mindset. So as I transitioned in the last year and a half, I really said, okay, how can I be a culture setter? How can I be somebody that represents the Butler way? How can I be a source of leadership to some of now the younger guys? I mean, they're playing more than me, but I have some insights and perspectives that they may not have. And it was really I got asked in another it wasn't necessarily a job interview, but it was an interview position within my hospital. And they said, "What are you most proud of?" And without hesitation, it was, my senior year, my teammates had actually chose me, and along with Andrew Travis, I call him Drewby, to be a team captain with him. And it wasn't because I played a lot. It wasn't because I was out there scoring 25 a game. I like to think it was because they knew I cared about them and that I wanted the best for them. And I wanted the team to be the best we could possibly be. All that mattered was winning. And I was willing to help them do whatever it took to get there, whether it was text messages, car rides, individual talks, extra shots where I'm just rebounding for them, whatever it was. I was hoping they knew that and kind of led into that last year and a half to really taking on more of a leadership role.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think something really telling about the Butler program, and it's something that we've got to see, especially, this past summer doing interviews with people within the program and now outside the program as alumni, is just success that a lot of the alumni have seen, even outside of basketball. So if it's in management and basketball, coaching, still playing overseas, but then outside in business and nonprofits, I think that's just really telling of what the program can build you up as. Kind of go into that and like how it built your, work ethic or how you are now as you transition into a career outside of basketball.
Yeah, I really think, and I've used this honestly when I when I talk to people about my medical journey or getting into medical school or residency, I'm like, it was the game of basketball, but in combination with being a walk-on, really, I mean, it taught me everything that I think has led me to have some life success this far. And really, as a Division I basketball player in general, and particularly as a walk-on, you got to learn to be accountable, and not only accountable like to your teammates, you're showing up, but you have to be accountable to yourself and making sure that you're pushing yourself so that you can continue to earn a spot, that you can continue to make those guys better. So you got to be accountable to yourself and others. You have to be reliable, right? Like you have to be one that shows up on time every time. You got to be at class on time every time, and you have to be someone they can count on and someone that they don't have to worry about. And really, the last one I say, and I'm kind of a nerd about leadership, but really being a walk-on and playing Division I basketball taught me how to lead, because what I realized was that there's so many great players, and it's really the culture that you create and the mental frame of mind that you can get people in to say, how can you ever, because we have 15 guys in that locker room. Each one of them needs to be led a little bit differently in order to maximize their potential, whether it's during that game, whether it's during that practice, or whether it's the course of the season. Are we on a 3-game winning streak? It's going to look different than it is whenever we lost a 2-game winning streak to or 2-game losing streak, excuse me, to Creighton and Georgetown back to back at home in January that senior year, where it looked entirely different. But at the same time, Holt always talked about we can't get too high and we can't get too low. All those principles of leading people uniquely, something I kind of coin as individualized leadership, being accountable, being reliable, and just being a team player. I mean, I worked every day for the betterment of my teammates. I took pride in that, and I did my role to the best that I could do. And that's translated into the medical field, whether that was in school and now out in residency, and eventually in a couple of years, taking care of people in the operating room. So,
All right, so I need to ask. I'm going to go back. Drewby. I
yeah.
need to know. I need to know why Drewby.
Honestly, you know what? That was just something I like to personalize, my relationships. And actually, Drew and I, we had like progressively just got every year got a little bit closer. Our junior year, we ended up living together in the AV apartments, and we had a great time. And I honestly, I wish I had like a cool story or a cool answer, but I just one day I started calling him Drewby because that was my thing to him. And we were there all 4 years together, and I love Drew. And I'd do anything for him. I'd fly out to anywhere he was if he needed me, and he knows that. And so just kind of my own unique thing with him, I guess. I don't know anybody else who's called him Drewby. He may not even like that I call him Drewby, but he's never told me otherwise. So
Yeah, he never met. I asked him what I always ask what you want to be called for an interview, and he didn't mention Drewby. So I guess, yeah, I guess that's
yeah,
between you guys. But Maybe going back against your playing days, what was one of your favorite memories in your 4 years, whether that's at Hinkle on the road, anywhere? What was kind of one or two of your favorite memories?
Yeah, honestly, the first one that comes to mind, there's obviously, playing at home. There were so many unique games where the crowd was just unreal. We had big wins. But honestly, my favorite memory of all of them was when we went to Villanova, and I'm sure you guys know the game. We went at Nova our senior year. Nobody had won there, I think, in like 7 years. And they had kind of had our number until the home game prior, man. And we went in there and we just ripped their hearts out. I mean, we won that game. Nobody thought we were going to win that game except for us. And we were, I swear, you may have to double check the number, but I think it was the first time in the pavilion, I believe that's what it was called, that anybody had won there in 7 years. And we just went in there and ripped their hearts out. That was an awesome win. That was one of my favorites. Obviously, the home games, I pick home games, but that one comes to mind for sure. It's just one heck of a memory. That plane ride home, it was awesome.
I don't know if that was the second or the first game that started the 3 game winning streak against Villanova when they were like, the top dog of like because I think that might have been the first one honestly because I think we then won twice at home. Because did you play with Keith and Savage your last? No.
Yes, that was
Yeah,
that was
okay,
my
that was your senior year. Yeah,
we
yeah,
beat
okay,
them at
okay.
home when they were number one.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Okay.
And then we played them again later at their place. And I'm sure everybody because we beat them the first time. I'm sure they expected us to go in there
Yes.
and get killed or something. But man, we outplayed them and ripped their hearts out. It was awesome.
And then another kind of a specific play I want to ask you about, and
Yeah.
I don't ask. We're sickos, right? We're Butler sickos. We look way too much into this stuff. I've watched probably every highlight you could probably think of in any game.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites is Citadel. I believe it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
now I'm going to question myself, but I believe it was Citadel.
It was.
You threw a lob to Tyler Weidman that might be one of the sickest dunks that's never talked about in the history of Butler.
Yeah.
Just walk us through that moment. You threw it up. It was a little high, but I mean, the way he caught it and cocked it back, give me the emotions, give me the lowdown on that one.
Yeah, so the funny part is first of all, so coming from Newcastle, none of us are high flyers, right? So my whole career, like I'm not used to AAU a little bit, travel. I'm not used to throwing hoops, but it's funny as Big Cat got or Tyler Wyman, everybody calls him Big Cat, as I'm sure you guys know. When he got there, it was funny. We developed like a very unique friendship that came on. And he's still one of my best friends to this day. I might text him more than I text my wife, honestly. You could ask her that. We talk all the time. One of my best friends. So, anyways, I was like, I saw him there. I was like, I'm just gonna throw it up there. There's no way he's not gonna get it for me. So it was just a little bit of a trust factor, a little bit of a lack of throwing alley oops in my career. But thankfully, it worked out. Me and him crack up. The funniest part about it was I remember Holt doing a post game interview, and somebody had asked him about it for some reason, and he was like, you know what? I was kind of surprised Bennett threw that pass too, and me and Big Cat were laughing because it was so funny. But it worked out. It worked out pretty good. It was about 2 inches away from being a total bust, but thankfully Cat had my back and was able to throw it down for sure. It made the Sports Center one of the highlights of my walk on career, I guess. Sports Center top 10. I think we got like number 5 or something that night. So.
Yeah, that again, that's one of the sickest Butler dunks that I feel like is never talked about.
Yeah.
You know, maybe what was one personal accomplishment that you felt like you are, I'm not trying to you talked about your favorite game being the Villanova one. What was maybe one personal moment specifically that you felt most proud about or that you were most excited about during your career?
Yeah, I think obviously, some of the in-game moments were special. I mean, I remember the first bucket I got. I was similar to Ethan. I think he's got a longer streak than me. My freshman year, I didn't miss a shot. I think I can't remember how many it was. It was just a few, but honestly, not to repeat myself, but the fact that my teammates and it wasn't. I don't even know. It's accomplishment, but it's not even because it was something I did. Them choosing me to be a team captain when I was really, I wasn't a guy that played, but they trusted me in that role. And that was by far my favorite memory, my proudest accomplishment while I was there, because it was more than just about me. And I will say it was special. I eventually did earn a scholarship, so it's not to discount that. I'm eternally grateful to Coach Holtman, Coach T, Pito, Barry Collier, um, um, everybody that would have been involved with that process. Um, Eternally grateful for, and that was a fulfilling individual career moment. But no way it kind of trumps having the opportunity to be the captain, co-captain with Drew that year. Just because I love my teammates, I always will, every single one of them. Um, they're all special to me, and they know that. I grew up an only child, so my teammates were always my brothers. And those guys at Butler, man, they know to this day that I would do absolutely anything for any one of them. So that whole culture we had and was special. So, and just to be a part of it, we don't even talk about the unsung heroes like the managers, all the stuff that they do, being able to team up with them, the coaches' wives, people who are kind of behind the scenes working hard. That's one of it's all my favorite memories. I promised the managers not to go on a rant here, but I don't know if they still do those senior day talks. I remember like post game back when I played, they always did like a quick speech, like each senior did a speech. And I remember the managers, they kind of come up to me and we thought if anybody was going to give us a shout out, we thought it would be, you. They were kind of playing jokes and I had forgotten. So I always said if I'm ever on the air somewhere talking again about Butler basketball, I give them credit because they do an unbelievable job. They work just as hard, if not harder, than anybody else. And shout out to them. But the opportunity to be a captain, to come back to your question, that year for that team and the success in the year that we had, one of the most grateful opportunities I've had to date. So.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I hate to break it to you, but you kind of got to cheer at least twice a year against Chris Holtman now. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
I
gotta,
know.
I don't know how to say that, but you gotta. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of mandatory. And one more question, I'll let BSC jump in. Do you ever make it back to Hinkle? And if you do, do you get to see the other guys, or kind of do you stay in contact with them? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I usually make it to at least one game a year for sure. Um, but I'd say the last couple of years I've gotten to about two or three of them. I keep in touch with a lot of guys. And it's always fun. I should say before I move on, it's a blast to be back at Hinkle. You see so many of the former, whether it's, guys like John Dedman and part of the administrative staff. Um, and Barry Collier, obviously, and the donors who are part of the program, and so many people. It's so much fun. But I keep in touch with a lot of former teammates: Kellen, Tlu, Avery, Big Cat, Sean. I mean, I keep in touch with a lot of them. I was back there with those guys at the TBT tournament back in July, so I was there with Big Cat and Keelan and Sean and Paulie. Paulie was there which was a great time. It was awesome to see them. So I keep in touch with quite a bit of them for sure. So we just created friendships that lasted a lifetime, thankfully.
Yeah, we had Paulie on the podcast actually right
Yep.
before the TBT.
Yep.
Great guy. He was really fun to talk to. He
Yeah.
is New York through and through. That is for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'll let BFC take it here. But I remember at that TBT, I thought it was the coolest thing. You get to see you saw like so many generations of Butler people that again I'm on a great time. 2009, 2013 was a pretty good time to go to Butler for
Yeah.
basketball purposes. But
Yeah.
it was so cool. You walk and I'm like, oh, there's Keelan. I'm like looking over, I'm like, oh, there's Gordon Hayward. Oh, there's like, it was just such a cool experience. I'm glad they're doing it again next year. But and shout out to Grant Ryan-Decker because I think he's made a huge improvement and a great Collier did amazing things. I'm just really excited with what Grant's doing. BSC, what you got, man?
Yeah, I think, one thing that's really cool, obviously, about your career, you really played Indiana high school basketball in one of the golden eras for talent. I mean, Zeller, Marcus Teague, Glenn Robinson, just to name a couple. Who do you think was the best player you played against during your time in school?
Like you're talking about high school in particular?
Yeah, in high school in particular.
High school in particular, man, there were a lot of really good ones. So I was, especially during, AAU in the summer and the travel, I was usually a couple years behind some of those guys. Obviously Zach Irvin was in my class. He was a stud, Mr. Basketball that year. He was good. I played against Trayvon Blewett a lot. He was tough, obviously. Went to Xavier, great career. There was also a guy named Xavier Turner. He played at Pike. He was a point guard. And I think he went on to play, I can't remember. I think he eventually ended up at Ball State. He was tough. Those guys were really fun to play against. Really, really good. Um, if I had to pick, I'd probably pick Zach just because he had so much length. He could shoot, he could get down low. So he was probably the toughest one we played against, whether in high school or travel. A lot of really good players, though. You're exactly right. I mean, I was surrounded by so much talent, and it helped me because it motivated me to work harder. And unfortunately, I wish I would have got my very last year of summer to play against them. For sure, I didn't get that opportunity, kind of junior year to senior year. But yeah, a lot of great players coming out of Indiana, and I was in an era, like you said, with grateful to be a part of it for sure.
And then just kind of one thing, obviously Butler has a kind of an interesting method where they hold their athletes to even higher expectations academically than any other schools. I think it's a 275 is to be eligible, which is 0.25 higher than everybody else. Um, and then for you, obviously taking on a tough major, taking on a tough academic journey while being a student athlete, it's something like Nate Fowler when I was there,
Yep.
was an engineering student and was taking half of his classes down at IUPUI. And I just always really respected the time management skills. So what advice would you have for any current student athletes or maybe, high school athletes that are looking to make the journey and balance that well?
Yeah, I think one thing I'm a firm believer in is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I always felt that the way that the effort that I put into the classroom was the same effort that was going to translate onto the court, was the same effort that I was going to put into the relationships with my teammates, into the scout team. So, I would say that there really is, my advice would be to have the mindset of that there is no detail that's too small. How you do the small stuff is how you do the big stuff, if you're a believer that there even is small stuff compared to big stuff. But take pride in what you do. Take pride in what the results that you produce, and be an example to your teammates. Um, you know, so those would be the things that I'd say. The ultimate theme would just be take pride in every single thing that you do, because if you're living right on the outside and you're putting in effort with your academics and your relationships and you're doing the right things, then you're going to be able to play the right way. You're going to be able to produce high level results. And I'm a firm believer that they kind of go hand in hand. So if you're living right, you're going to play right. That's kind of the short answer that I would give, and taking pride in putting in the results, so your other teammates can see that too.
All right, one or two more things here, and then BFC, do you have anything else, or I'll wrap it up after that? Awesome. So you played with a lot of great players in Butler, right? You played with a lot of great ones.
Absolutely.
Let's go with who was maybe the toughest. You ran scout teams and stuff like that. Who was the toughest one to go up against in your career, your 4 years at Butler? Who did you match up with during like practice and stuff? You're like, damn it.
Oh man, you know what? It would probably, somebody's going to hear this and they'll probably be offended. I can't believe Steve didn't say me. Who? It was honestly probably Rose, because Rose was so strong. Probably a common answer you might. Rose was so strong, and he was able to get shots off that you just didn't quite understand. I mean, that he's probably not going to pull up for a 15, 20 footer. He's going to come in, he's going to lower that shoulder. Drew might have talked about that. He's going to lower that shoulder, pull back a little bit, and just kind of put up his floater. Really, really hard to guard because you can't chest him up because he's going to knock you right over. And it was probably Rose. Now, obviously, you got like chasing around Kellen, super hard. The guy can run for miles and put up a shot and swish it no matter what. Keelan, obviously, a very natural scorer. So many of those guys. I mean, man, we had a lot of great players, but I'm blessed to be teammates with those guys. I'd probably pick Rose though if I absolutely had to pick. So
Obviously, I'm not part of the team ever, but like if I had to pick one during your time frame, that would probably be the same pick. I'm like, man, getting in front of that would just not be a fun task to do. Most
yeah,
unorthodox shots I've ever seen in my entire life, and he's like a YMCA college athlete. I've never seen someone do it like this.
yeah,
Actually, uh, honestly, Andrew Travis was probably the next closest thing from an unorthodox perspective. He'd always hit those weird floaters that you were like, how the heck
oh
did
yeah,
that
that
thing
was
go
his
in?
go-to. Yeah,
Yeah, it never
yeah,
made sense. We talked to him about that. He's like, yeah, over time, I just started making them. I was like, well, I'm kind of undersized. I might as well just keep shooting them. I was like, yeah, that works out pretty well. Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then maybe when you were on campus, who was one of the guys that you kind of just saw and you're like, this guy has a ton of potential. He's going to be a star.
Yeah, absolutely. Kamar definitely comes to my mind as one of the first guys. I remember when he got there. the summer before his freshman year, because we all get there, a couple months before school starts. And right from the get-go, whether he was doing individual workouts, particularly in open gym, everybody saw the length that he had in his arms and his ability to finish at the rim. And from the very get-go, you could tell that he had unbelievable skill, unbelievable potential. And you quickly saw that year, right? I mean, the game winner against Northwestern, the unbelievable steal against Josh Hart to beat Villanova at home. Obviously, Josh is now in the league and had himself a heck of a career. But I mean, Kamar was a freshman doing those things, and obviously the rest of his 3 years speaks for itself. One of the greatest to play there, but definitely when he got there, he was ready, unbelievably talented, an even better guy too. So, and a great teammate.
Awesome, man. Well, again, Stephen, appreciate you hopping on, man. Really enjoy. We love hearing from alumni. It's so fun. Obviously, Butler's had. I think we're on the up and up, but Butler had a few down years, so it's nice to hear about the good old days again. And bring back those ones. But no, really appreciate you hopping on. Obviously, if you're ever in Indy, please let us know. We'd love to hit you up in Hinkle, but I love to end it always with Go Dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Dogs. Thank you guys for having me. It's always cool to be a part of anything Butler basketball. And so grateful to be here with you guys. So
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. All right. So as discussed, now we will cover the Butler Bulldogs up to date. Just to recap everyone on some things, because this is our first episode kind of diving into the season. Butler won their first game against Missouri State, 72-65. They followed that up with, unfortunately, which we will never speak of again, how do you pronounce this? P-A? I've never known how to say it. It's P? Okay. Austin P. They followed up with an Austin P loss. We're never going to speak of this again. It never happened. Well, it did, but we're not going to talk about it. They then responded pretty well since then, boys. They got a Western Michigan 20-point win, which was in the first half, but then pulled away in the second half. And we're going to focus today on the biggest win today, which was against a Ken Palm top 75 team, SMU at home. Return of Chuck Harris. Just so everyone knows, we got I know me and BFC have been leading the way in the interviews lately, but we got our old friend Michael D. Rosa back on the mic, as well as Kyle the Butler fan. So boys, welcome back. It's good to have you boys back. So Michael, I'll punt to you first. Let's recap this SMU game. What would you like? What didn't you like? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, first of all, it's good to be back on my own podcast after 8 months. Yeah, you're talking to guests who are good at basketball, and it's like I've also scored a point in Hinkle Fieldhouse. So
I just want you to know we missed you, obviously. Just so everyone knows, we just felt that 4 interviewers for one interviewee at a time was a little excessive. That is why don't want to be mistaken that that we wanted them on. That's why. All right.
It 100% makes sense. Like no complaints here. I'm just shooting the shit. But I don't know if I can cuss. Too late.
Yes, you can.
Good. Okay. We'll get to cussing later then. There's another one I have. But yeah, I liked seeing Telford initiate the offense. They did that a lot in the second half in particular. I thought he played really, really well in the SMU game. I was really impressed with him. And Patrick McCaffrey, I don't think has missed a shot all year. Don't actually fact check that. He has been excellent from deep. He was excellent. And then you got a great game from Colby King, 4 of 4 from deep, just shooting really well. And then they ran that one inbounds play where SMU just looked lost and he got an easy layup. But I was really impressed with Telford. Telford's just awesome. He's so good. He is as advertised. And I think we all had really high expectations for him. And I feel like he's kind of surpassed that. And I just think that is a credit to how good he is as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also note that he's been nursing an ankle injury too. So like I don't know if he's 100%, but he aggravated that in the Austin P game. So pretty impressive what he's doing, considering he is probably battling a little bit of pain. Kyle, what about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think that frankly we've played 3 good halves of basketball this year, and it's been the last 3 halves that we've played. I think it's fair to say that the first 5 were probably not ideal. And then second half against Western Michigan, like you said, we pulled away, and then I think we won that second half by 18 points, and then played 2 pretty solid halves against SMU. So the first thing is you'd like to say that's the team has clearly seen something and is progressing. I don't want to say definitively that a switch clicked at switch flipped at halftime at Western Michigan, but it's possible. But ultimately, when it comes to the SMU game, I think that if we can continue to the Austin P loss and the first game, it was very clear that the initiation of offense outside, and you're right, when Telford initiates offense, it's great, but the offense initiation outside of him was just nowhere to be found. And I think it's fair to give a shout out to Finley Bizjack for his play in the SMU game, and Colby King as well, and just having guards that, the two of them really did step up in that SMU game as far as making things happen and getting the defense moving instead of it being stagnant and just let Ja do his thing, which again sometimes can be a fruitful strategy. But I think Finley was a big X factor, and I think Andre Screen had a bounce back game, and I think when he plays like that, it's a big boost. We need centers. It's not the best year for centers in the Big East, but to have a guy that big play a little bit better than he did earlier in the season, I thought was very important, especially against a team with two big guys like Traore and the Turkish guy that I can't spell his name.
I don't think any of us can, but no, I agree. I think we knew Andre was going to have to be using some capacity this game, just given the size, starting at 7'2" and 6'11" guys. So I thought Dre had the intensity with which he played with, I thought was top notch. BSC, what about you, man?
Yeah, I think Andre's an interesting case because when you're looking at the scouting report, you think that we had, a big mismatch in those first couple games when they were starting centers that were, 6'8" or 6'9". But in reality, Andre's game really struggles against guys with that kind of body type, like the bowling ball style centers. He just can't really keep up. And that's why you saw Acacia get a lot more minutes in those games, and he stepped up to the plate and, played great. But then this game, when you have kind of the more standard center build, when you're running 6'11", 7 foot. You saw what we saw against, inferior opponents last year during the non-conference where, he had the ability to kind of take over games a little bit where he's just not missing if he's around the block. And, when he's coming off the bench, that's huge. I mean, 10 and 9 off the bench for a center when we thought that was going to be the big mismatch. They've got the international prospect who, is projected to be an NBA draft pick. They had Traore, who we all wanted to be a Bulldog this offseason. But obviously Eric Dickerson boosters came into play on that one. Um, but yeah, I think Screen had a great game, and it was nice to see him get a little more confidence back from not only the fan base but in himself. I think he played really confident, especially that second half when he kind of knew he had gotten it going. He missed a bunny to start, and I was like, oh, not again. But then yeah, he really picked it up, and then yeah, I think Pat McCaffrey is going to go down as one of the biggest steals of the offseason. I mean, when we were talking with Jack earlier in the offseason, he even said he's shooting it like he's never shot before. And I think that's a credit to John Diebler, who's really the, bona fide shooting coach on the team. I mean, he's just lights out. And that consistent 10 to 15, 10 to 18 points is just something we didn't have last season. We lose DJ Davis, who was, either a human microwave scoring 20, but then he could go silent. So I think that's going to be extremely beneficial to just have, a grown man that's been playing college basketball for 5 years who, can give you that consistent offensive boost every game is huge. And that kind of shown brightly in that game as well. Even when after he went down with the injury, he came back and made a big shot, made some big plays. So that was huge.
If the season goes down the way we want it to, Pat has a chance to be like one of the better one season Bulldogs like ever, frankly.
As long as it pans out, yeah. I mean and back to what BSU was saying, yeah, I can attest to that. So Jack basically said that he used to think Connor would beat Patrick 1-on-1, and he said that he doesn't know what's got. I mean, testament to his to PMAC's work ethic this offseason, but he said he changed his answer because PMAC just doesn't miss. So do I expect him to shoot 51% from three? No, but I mean, realistically, we could, his career average is like in the kind of like low mid 30s. I think we could see him being much higher this year, especially in the offense that we run. A lot of open shots. One thing I will note, and this is kind of something that I just noticed, I was making a tweet earlier. Butler has shot 45% or better from 3-point in 3 out of the 4 games. Can you guess which game they did not shoot 45%?
Open the fly. Let's go pee.
There you go, P, right? They shot 28%. So my big thing going forward for this team is I want to see if they have a secondary option to score, because that's actually quite a bit when you think about it. The one game they're off shooting, is their defense enough to hold up? And can they get more of an inside presence? Can they get Ja and Pierre going downhill? Because I think that's my only, I mean, not my only, but and we'll talk about that here in a second, but definitely a concern of mine as I was going through that. I'm like, oh, so the one off shooting night we lose to a Q4 team, right? Like we need to make sure that we have other options. So speaking of that, kind of going forward, before we even dive into the Merrimack stuff, maybe you're kind of one positive thing going forward, and then what's one thing you still want to maybe see in the next game to see Butler improve upon. And Michael, I'll start with you.
Yeah, one positive thing, I mean, we've touched on the shooting at length, so I'll just take it now. This team is shooting the ball is just, they're lasers, straight lasers. Everybody's shooting it really well. It's been excellent. And there are definitely going to be games where the team isn't hitting shots, but like in general, this is a very good shooting team. Like Colby King off the bench is a really good shooter. Finley Bizjak's a better shooter than I think he's shown in college. Patrick McCaffrey hasn't missed all season. And Pierre Brooks, we obviously know how good a shooter Pierre Brooks is. This team is going to be a good shooting team all season long. One thing I'm concerned with, and it's going to be my concern for the year, we're giving up a ton of steals. Like just looking at the KenPom page for Butler, 21.6% turnover percentage. That is 306th in the country. Steal percentage, that means how many times the opponent is stealing the ball rather than just a turnover out of bounds. 332nd. This team turns the ball over a lot, and Finley Bizjak's been a good, solid presence with the ball. Jamil Telford the same, but other than that, I don't really know if anyone I fully trust whenever they put the ball on the floor. That really concerns me, especially when you get to Big East play or you're playing some of these really good teams that they're able to shut down a Telford. They're able to take him out of the game. Then what do you do? And that is a concern for me.
Yeah, we talk about Big East play. It's just to piggyback off of that. We talked about how I think a lot of people have talked about how the Big East is maybe lacking a bit at center this year. Um, the Big East is not lacking in good defensive guards.
Yeah.
So definitely need to tighten that up a little bit before conference play.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that the big thing that I've really liked so far is just the ability to get Ja into his spots early in possessions. I think he's had the ability to get where he wants to go and play make from there. And it's not just him. I think, King, especially since that first game where, the nerves get to you. He's back in Power Five, wasn't 100% sure on his role, but since the first game, he's been lights out defensively too. He's been way better defensively than I was expecting with like just active hands. He might get blown by sometimes, but yeah, if he can come in and get some steals, get a block or two, that's gonna be huge off the bench. The thing that I'm a little bit concerned with, and it'll be a concern until Jamie Kaiser comes back, hopefully sooner rather than later, is the eighth man or the bench past the seventh man. So we're getting production from Kasi or Screen, and then we're getting production from King, and those are the two position groups that we're really relying on off the bench right now. But you got 0 points outside of those two guys. On again against SMU. And because of how efficient the rest of the guys were, every starter I think was in double digits. Um, you can get away with it, but we need another guy to step up. If that's Landon Moore, if that's Kapke, until Kaiser comes back, who we expect to be a calming presence and a shooter and really just a 3-and-D guy, which we're lacking a little bit. I think we just need somebody to step up, and I don't care who it is, but somebody's got to do it because if somebody is to get in foul trouble and Thad's teams don't really foul, that's a calling card for him. But if Finley gets in foul trouble or if the ankle flares up or anything like that, we just need somebody to step up and get some buckets or get some playmaking off the bench.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. And Harry said my thing earlier about 3-point. The obvious one, rebounding. In the SMU game, gave 14 offensive rebounds. To Michael's point earlier, SMU had 9 steals. Luckily, we didn't let them convert that into too many points, which we had in previous games against lesser competition. And then I guess one more before we go to Merrimack. Who would you say is kind of like your MVP of the season so far? I know it's only been 4 games, but we're catching everybody up to now. So, Mike, I'll start with you, and I think I know your answer, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, Telford without a doubt.
Yeah.
He is so good. It's been a while since Butler's had a player on either the Big East first or second team. Jamil Telford's going to break that trend. He is awesome. Yeah, and it really surprised me that he wasn't higher on NBA draft radars, that he wasn't in the G League Combine. That's a mistake, and that mistake will be righted this season if NBA scouts have a brain.
I will tell you, I've walked by him probably a handful of times, and every time I walk by him, I'm just amazed at the physical specimen he is. And I don't mean to sound creepy when I say that, but oh my God, he is like 6'7" and he's a tank. Like he's not just like a 6'7" guy, he is like 6'7", like you know what I mean, just like an absolute tank. And yeah, I mean I feel bad for anyone that has to go one-on-one with him. Kyle, what about you?
I mean, the answer as far as MVP is best player is it's Jamil Telfort. As far as maybe
Okay, let's all pick. Let's all dive into someone different. So yeah, you go.
I was gonna say, as far as someone who I think has maybe done some things differently than I thought and adding some things to their game or brought a different presence. BFC mentioned the defense of Colby. I would like to mention when it comes to Colby that I noticed this when I watched the SMU game back today. When the opponents put up a shot, I know that we do struggle with defensive rebounding a little bit. When the opponents put out a shot, the center, whether that be Andre or Cassia, and usually one other player will stay around the basket to try to grab the rebound. And like Pierre and Finley will start like leaking out a little bit. The person who doesn't leak out and stays right under the basket and is literally relied on to be a rebounder on this team is Colby King. He is actually actively relied on by Thad to be a defensive rebounder because he kind of jumps out of the gym and gets rebounds he shouldn't. And it's a weird thing that I've just really appreciated him doing this season that I just didn't know he had in his game at all coming into this year. So it's been interesting to watch, and I just wanted to shout that out.
I will say with Colby, he had his first I mean, obviously he had his breakout game, but he had his first like swaggy moment where he like licked his fingers, then wiped it off because it was too hot. I was like, yes, that is what I want. Because I missed some of that DJ Davis. So I admit, like he had swag. Like he would like do a bunch of shenanigans after he scored, and it pumps me up. I mean, people, some old heads might think that's stupid, but like I don't know, I love it. I think it's fun. And so watching him do that, I was like, there we go. That's the Colby, the confident Colby I want to see. BSC, what about you?
Yeah, obviously just well, first with Telford, I mean, he's a beast and he's shooting 43% from three on 4 attempts this year. So, I mean, you can't really guard him one on one because like when he got the switch in the last game onto the big man, he just fired a three over his head. And it was I mean, you can't really guard that. But I think Finley has been extremely impressive this year, even with the shot not really falling. I mean, in the last game and against Western, he shot the ball well. Um, but outside of that, the offense just looks different with him on the court because of his ability to play make, and his passing is so much better than last year. I know obviously last year he was kind of in that pinch hitter role, like seventh or eighth man. But this year, I think that he just has taken it on the chin of just being the starting point guard and has done everything that you need to do as a starting point guard to make the team better. And then also, kind of going off what Kyle said, you're getting 10 rebounds a game out of your two best guards. Finley's averaging around 6 and King's around 4. If you can get that all year and you've got active rebounding from point guards and point guards that aren't going to, get the ball and trying to launch some stupid pass or go down and, try and go over a 7-footer like we saw last year, that's just huge. I mean, the ability to get the offense and then initiate the offense quickly, get it off the rim and get it to the end of the court as quickly as possible is big. And then with Finn, he's also able to create offense off ball. We saw in the last game, Telfort was bringing the ball up a lot, but he's not just going and sitting in the corner, which is kind of what you'd expect of a point guard that's not bringing the ball up. But he's letting Telfort get to a spot and get the mismatch and then come in and get the ball and getting it where it needs to go. And I think he's shown a lot of maturity this year for a sophomore that I think we really needed. Obviously, kind of gambling on a guy that didn't even really play point guard last year, being the starter, but he's been great. And once that shot starts falling, he's just going to be a stat stuffer.
Yeah, I've said this like multiple times. I think Finley's kind of the X, and I guess to an extent, King is like the X factor of this team. Whether or not they can initiate, I mean, with Ja bringing it up, but at the end of the day, we need someone to initiate offense, and I agree with you. Well, I'll wrap up with the other ones because you guys left me very little options. Obviously, we've talked about PMAC. So, we've already covered this. I mean, the way he is shooting right now, the confidence level, 14 for 27 from three, shooting 51%. Just absolutely insane. So I'm going to give a shout out. And you know what? I'm gonna get my boy Pierre Brooks because I think he's kind of like we get, obviously Ja's just doing his thing and like he's just taking over, and we're all excited about PMAC, who's like making all these threes. Let's not forget Pierre shooting 42% from three. Guess what Pierre's also shooting, which is a huge upgrade this year for Pierre because Pierre struggled at the free throw line last year bad. Like he shot like 65% from the free throw line. This year he is shooting 88%, 89% basically. And it's not like a tiny sample size. He has shot, let's see, let me do my math here. 9, 14, 18. He shot 18 free throws through 4 games, and he's shooting 89% on it. So, I mean, he's averaging a little over 4 free throws a game, and he's draining them. So, I think, and I think actually there's a couple at the SMU game where he made some like in the second half that were huge. I think it was after the Tech when Trey R just like smacked him in the flagrant or whatever. I didn't see what happened. I just all of a sudden there was something, I don't know what happened, but so I mean, huge shout out to Pierre. I mean, again, I think right now he's just doing his thing. He had like I think a lot of people look at the first game, they see the 6 turnovers and they're like, I don't know why. I think somehow because since then he's only had 2 a game, which is whatever. Huge shout out to Pierre for continuing to kind of just be that shooter. He always seems to hit the like dagger. I mean, always. It seems like it's always him. I think of like the Texas Tech game last year, the Cal game last year, the SMU game, the one he hit in the corner, done. It was like it's over. And you could see if you watch that replay, he wants it. He's like, I have this. Like, just let me end this. And I mean, when he's confident, Pierre's deadly from three. I mean, he's a deadly shooter. So I think he's been doing exactly a lot of what's expected of him, which is keep scoring, keep shooting. That's what we want him to keep doing. And I think now that we're having a little better facilitation, I think he's just going to get even better from there. So I don't want to leave Pierre out of it either because I feel like he just hasn't quite gotten the spotlight this year that some of the other players have gotten. But anything else you guys want to add about the season up till now, or should we dive into Merrimack?
I will say the Traore attack was a little soft. It was like he went to push back, like to try to get post seal, and I think he like poked Pierre in the eye or something like that.
Well, it was like, because like the ball was still like mid-court,
Yeah.
I feel like, or something. And so all of a sudden something happened down low, and I was like, I don't know. I will say props to Chuck, and anyone who booed him, that's so lame. Don't boo him. Come on. People transfer the transfer portal all the time. I will say that Chuck definitely escalated things. Don't slap our best player in the arm after the play is dead. You're just asking to get booed even harder. I will say Chuck played a great game, but he definitely his emotions get to his head because he cost them some points too. So, anyway, anyone else? Otherwise, Michael, I'll pass to you. Give us a quick little breakdown. So Butler plays Merrimack this Friday. Nice week break for the Dogs at home in Hinkle. I will let Michael. I believe they are like the 200. I don't have KenPom up in front of me. If anyone does, I think they're like 200-ish, like right around that area. 202. There we go. The 202nd ranked KenPom team. Just so you guys know, Austin P is around that area too. So let's not take Merrimack. Let's not take them easy. So, Michael, what you got?
Yeah, Merrimack's a really weird team. 80th defensively in the country, so like they're good. And they run a 2-3 zone. That's their main defense. But the difference with Merrimack's 2-3 and like most 2-3s, when you think most 2-3s, you're like, okay, but you can get like a ton of threes, right? It's very boring. They want to like slow it down. Merrimack's 2-3 is really aggressive. They go for steals anytime they can. They're gambling at all times. And they really run you off the 3-point line. They like want you to go into it's really weird. Like on the wings, they will literally just like stunt immediately like to block anything and then drop back, and then they'll try to steal, like you'll pass back, swing over, and they'll jump that too. They want to play super, super aggressive in this zone. It's kind of hard to explain without showing it, but like they are very, very aggressive with their zone defense. It's unlike anything pretty much you will see in college basketball. I do like that our team has a week to prepare for it, and they'll find a way, but they run you off the 3-point line. Princeton was able to hit threes in their last game against them because that Princeton team's a really good shooting team. Butler's also a really good shooting team. That's going to be a key. But also another thing they do is they gamble for every steal. They look to turn over and they'll turn their 2-3 zone into this like trapping press. I imagine we're going to see that a little bit. Bud Clark is their star player. He's their point guard. Adam Clark, if they're not going by his nickname. He's awesome. Excellent defensively. It would not stun me if he led the country in steals at the end of the year. I don't know where he's at now. And but offensively, their team, to put it lightly, they can't fucking score. They're horrible offensively. Um, they settle for a lot of mid-range jumpers. They are not a good three-point shooting team. They can't really fully get it inside. Not a good scoring team whatsoever. They want to play games in like the 60s. Like through the 3 games this season, they've put up 65, 42, and 57 points. So they're averaging about 57 points a game. They play Rutgers 2 days before they come to Hinkle. That number's not going to go up against Rutgers. Rutgers is a great defensive team. They're just not very good offensively, like at all. They don't shoot a ton of threes. They just try to get layups, but defensively, they're active. They're annoying. They're going to try to slow this game down and muck it up. And their defense, it's something for like those like old school coaches. If you want to coach like a 2-3 zone at like your 7th grade level, Merrimack's one of the teams that you just want to look at to see like how it translates to modern basketball. Though if you're also playing at the 7th grade level, kids can't really hit threes.
So you think that this is something where, because what I liked, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs. There's a couple times I feel like where we hit Telfort kind of flashing to the middle, and once Telfort gets it in the middle, I think he's one of the most dangerous players in the game. Do you think as long as they're not hitting those gaps and we're not turning it over, do you think this is something where we could expose them with Telfort in the middle?
I think you could, but at the same time, I think if this is almost any other 2-3 zone, pretty much, you will be able to hit Telfort in the middle. It'll be easy. Merrimack does a really good job to like have a couple guys just like kind of monitor Telfort whenever they have space. They're really aware defensively. That I don't think it'll be as easy as it was. I believe Western Michigan tried to run a zone at some point. Was it Western or SMU tried to run a zone? Someone did.
SMU
Yeah,
did.
SMU did,
Yeah.
and that was barbecue chicken. I don't
Yeah.
think it'll be as easy in this game. They're so fundamentally sound and aggressive defensively that if you're not like faking to Telford or watching his back, those passes could be stolen and they could get out on a break where they might brick the layup, but they could get out on a break.
So I watched the entire Princeton game because I had nothing better to do and I was just curious. Um, and I just want to build off of the Bud Clark thing. That kid he's so fun. He's really, really fun. He's just unlimited energy. I think he is going to be I don't like Boopy Miller and Chuck Harris are good guards, but the challenge they provided Finley and Colby is going to be quite different, and probably less uncomfortable for a Colby and Finley than what Bud Clark will provide them. This kid is, what Michael also didn't mention is he's 5'10", and that might be generous. He's probably 5'9". I don't know. He's super small, super quick, gets up in your face, and he is kind of their whole offense. He's kind of fun on offense. Definitely is shifty. I'm excited to watch him at Hinkle, and I'm also very, very interested as I think that this is a genuine test to see how especially Finley handles Bud being all up in his face and, like Michael said, not being afraid to be really aggressive on defense.
I just want to emphasize a few things because I knew they were bad offensively, but I didn't realize how bad they were offensively. So I wanted to name a few things before I let BFC talk here. Because when you say he's their like best player, like, yeah, he's like their only offensive player. They are, I don't, someone could tell me how many. I know there's 360 something, like 364, 5. I don't know what it is nowadays. They always seem to add a few, but just for some perspective, they are 361st in points per game, so essentially almost dead last. In field goal percentage, they are 355th, again, essentially almost dead last. In three-point percentage, they are 354th, almost dead last. Total rebounds, 334th. We can out-rebound them, guys. They're bad. And then in assists, they average 5.7 assists per game. They basically average what Finley averages in a game as a team. They are 364th in the country.
That is DFL. 360. There are 364 teams in the country. That is last.
Okay, so they are dead last. Okay, so
then
this makes sense with the next one. Assist to turnover ratio. They are 363rd. Block shots, 286. They suck offensively. Holy shit, that is really bad. And I don't even know anything about it. I can look at these stats and I can tell you they suck offensively. I don't have to do much more than that, okay? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that Clark is their only player since he averages 20.7 per game. And he averages basically half their points. That's a pretty insane stat. BFC, what about you? What are you looking forward to in this game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're really, really bad offensively. But at the same time, I think, and obviously with Austin P, we have to be careful. Take every game super seriously, but I do think it's a good chance to like explore some schemes against a zone and an aggressive style of defense that, we might see later on. Obviously, Seton Hall can't score either, but defensively very aggressive. Will get into you, will kind of drive you off the 3-point line. So, it's a good chance early on to face a good different style defense. Um, and I think that'll be good for obviously the young guards too. Between Finley and Colby, they still just haven't played too much college basketball at the point. Colby was essentially an off guard all year last year, and Finley, like we talked about, was as well. So I think getting a chance to get into offense and get into schemes against a different aggressive defense is going to be good for us in the long run. But then, I mean, take them seriously. I mean, they beat a Vermont team that is good every year. They lost to VCU and they lost to Princeton, who are both good teams. Obviously, Princeton's a very good team if you don't know. And so yeah, I think it'll be a fun chance to kind of see where we're at against a different style, which is all you can kind of ask for, especially as we start getting into the nitty-gritty of the non-con.
Anything else you guys want to add going forward, looking at the Merrimack game, or otherwise, we'll wrap it up here for our first little breakdown of the season, boys. It's nice having the group back together.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, Michael. Really missed you. Kyle missed you. BFC, I see you too often. I guess I'll talk to you all soon, and we will go kick some Merrimack ass on Friday. Go Dogs.